Hi, Dan Goodstein here. I head up media and events for ERPA AI. I'm joined today by Tom Castle. He's the Director of Artificial Intelligence at RBS. Tom, good to be with you today.
Hi, good afternoon.
So, Tom, you've spent, I think, your entire life in the banking world. You've done things around know your customer and digital technology. I'm curious how your career has evolved into this over the last few years, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about your role at RBS.
Yeah, definitely. Not quite my entire life, but yeah, feels like it sometimes. Yeah, I've spent 15 years plus in financial services here in the UK, working for a variety of different organisations, predominantly doing kind of project and program implementation type roles. Kind of by education, I have an engineering background, so that's a fairly natural fit. A lot of that time was spent in the early days on kind of traditional IT implementation, lots of automation type projects, various systems for settlements, trading systems, etc. And probably over the last 5 to 10 years, seen quite a shift away from some of those more internal systems to more and more focused on sort of customer outcomes, customer-centered design type systems, and particularly in the last few years, a lot more customer-facing digital technologies. I think we've seen a real shift to, customers being able to do stuff themselves rather than having to rely on the banks to do their banking for them. And then more recently, the last year or two, artificial intelligence has started to really become something that, as a business, we've started to look at. And so that's now where I spend the majority of my time, looking at how we can apply artificial intelligence within the bank to deliver better outcomes for our customers and for our staff.
So many of the companies I speak to today are not doing AI, or they're just starting AI programs. And even some of the ones that are, they don't really know why they are. They just, I think, are trying to kind of check that box around the new cool technology. So I'm curious as to kind of what prompted it at RBS.
Yeah, it's a good question. RBS has got a really strong innovation culture. I think as an organization, we have a constant sort of view on a whole load of emerging technologies, emerging kind of trends, and the impact they will have on us and our customers. And AI is definitely one of those that's been on the radar for a couple of years. We have innovation and scouting teams out in the Valley and in a number of the other kind of tech hubs. And we've definitely seen, our senior management go out and meet companies out there and see that AI is something that can deliver value for the businesses. So there's been very much a top-down view that AI is a capability we should be investigating. And I think that's been a big driver for a lot of the work we've started to do. We've seen what the startups are doing. We're also seeing what some of the big players are doing, the likes of obviously Google and Facebook, but then some of the organizations we partner with, the likes of IBM and Microsoft, etc., are all starting to have more and more of their business focus on artificial intelligence, and really it's been a natural next step for us.
So, you mentioned some of these, AI superpowers, right? And there's a lot of talk in the marketplace, in the consumer space as well, obviously around kind of general AI, right? But I'm curious as to where it connects to the banking world. Are there specific scenarios that you could kind of share where you guys are using it and getting value out of it today?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, obviously two of the core aspects of artificial intelligence are the underlying mathematics and having large amounts of data. And both of those things are inherently part of banking and have been for a long time. And so I think, artificial intelligence is really a next step in the evolution of how we use, a lot of that mathematical modeling in heritage we've got, and the vast amounts of data we clearly kind of gather and have as part of the day-to-day business of running a large-scale bank. And so really anywhere within the business we see an opportunity or a business problem, and we have a lot of data in that space, there are things that we can start to investigate and use to kind of help us potentially achieve better business outcomes. So yeah, all over the place really. I think that it's probably easier to say where would we not apply AI within our business. I don't think there's any limits being put on that at all at the moment.
Okay, great. So how does a new idea, a new project, or a new AI implementation start? Does it start with the business problem, or is there folks on the technology side or within your team that kind of start the conversation? And And then I'm curious as to, how siloed are those implementations, or have you been able to do anything enterprise wide?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's both. I think, and actually where those two come together is, I think, where we see the best outcomes. So a lot of what my team does and my focus on is bringing those two things together. So understanding what our big strategic goals are, what the business problems are, and what our customers' problems are. And then from a technical perspective, understanding what the kind of strengths and weaknesses, what the capability of this thing called AI is. There's a lot of hype out there. There's a lot of buzz, and so sort of cutting through that and getting to a view of actually what can we do, what's achievable, and where does that solve real problems for the business. That's where we're kind of trying to hit that sweet spot. Let's understand the technology and understand the problems, and where those two come together is where we tend to then start to try and focus our effort on implementing artificial intelligence. And to the point around the enterprise side, I think most of what we try and do, we try and implement it in a way that it can be reused as widely as possible. Generally speaking, I think we try and start small, start narrow, prove out the sort of technical capabilities and make sure, we've got the right amount of data, etc., to make it work. And then when we've kind of demonstrated that it can work, we will start to look at how can we use that, beyond that single place. How can we kind of leverage the value of that technology across the whole organization, which is, of course, a challenge in a large organization, but it is really a big focus. Delivering stuff across the enterprise is definitely a big win.
So my sense is the possibilities are kind of endless, right? And being so data rich, as you say, there's probably a lot of different places to go with it. I'm curious, what's your advice to someone watching this who maybe is just starting or looking to launch an AI program within the enterprise? What's your advice on where they should start?
I think going back to those sort of couple of basics I talked about. So first of all, having a really good understanding of what your business problems are. Probably actually starting looking at your overall sort of strategic goals for the organization. Where are you going, and what are the big challenges or the big problems you have that it's worth focusing on. The next is then, okay, well, in that space, do we have a decent amount of data, or can we get access to data at a large enough scale that there's an opportunity for us to go after? And then I think the next step is working out how you can start small but think big. So, what can you get out there quickly, kind of proof of concept or MVP, which can help sort of test the water and demonstrate the technical capability without having to invest too much time and money in shifting the organization. I think doing it in a fairly safe way, particularly in large enterprise organizations where it's important to keep stability and keep BAU working for your customers. Finding kind of low risk areas to kind of try this stuff out and kind of test the water is probably a good starting point.
So many of my members are heavily involved in robotic process automation, or maybe even more intelligent types of automation. Some of them are beginning to dabble with things like machine learning and NLP and OCR kind of things. I'm curious as to, with the implementations of AI that you're doing, are you using that in tandem with some of these other technologies, or do you see it as a separate kind of opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, I think AI is absolutely something that needs to be part of sort of an end-to-end implementation. My team, our artificial intelligence team, sits within the business as opposed to sort of outside as part of a separate innovation team, really in recognition of the fact that you can't do AI on its own. It has to be part of a wider technology change or a wider organizational implementation. And so where we're looking to implement AI, it would generally speaking be alongside some other sort of fundamental business change and transformation. And as much as possible, where we can daisy chain together bits of technology to leverage the best of that is key. So, there are definitely situations where we will use RPA to help us maybe extract information from unstructured data and put it into a format that we can then feed into a machine learning algorithm, and then off the back of that help drive, informed decision making. So yeah, using those technologies and understanding and using the best of each piece of technology as part of that end-to-end value chain, I think is definitely a key win. But again, going back to that previous point around where do you start, I think not trying to kind of solve everything in one go, looking at how you can, what we call value slice, and deliver incrementally, using kind of agile or whatever to kind of get stuff delivered and out the door and prove quickly. I I think that's the right way to go about it, right? Trying to do everything in one go it's just a recipe for disaster.
Great. Great advice. Tom Castle, thank you for joining us. Looking forward to seeing you at our Automation Innovation Conference in London.
Yep. Look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Cheers. Bye.